We'd like to welcome everyone. Appreciate you tuning in. I'm one of your hosts, Sam K. Jackson, along with Smokey, Richard Garrett, and LJ Law Johnson. Today's topic, again, we want to circle back to something that has been a reoccurring theme for the last couple of weeks, and that's the topic of leadership. If you're paying attention to what's going on in society, you will see a lot of the conversation is defaulting all the way back to poor leadership or effective leadership. So we just can't get away from it. We got an election coming up soon, and we're looking to install strong leadership, get back on track with that. We have local races and local issues going on in our community that is involving leadership, that is affecting the morale and the community relations. So we just want to hit on that once again. Would any one of you guys like to kind of get it kicked off? I do have a question as it pertains to leadership, but just to see if you guys want to open it up with a specific topic.
Well, Smokey usually give us our scripture reference. So, what you got?
Well, I know one of our things we're going to be talking about is the I believe about the these settlements. With the matter of fact, I can go to exactly what we're going to address. One of our topics is going to be city lawsuit settlements. Do they cost the agency, the cities, or tax-paying citizens? And it was a recent article, I guess a recent settlement in the city of Jacksonville. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, they arrested some of the Black Lives Matter protesters, and they've come to a settlement. I'll read what they come to. Jacksonville Sheriff's Office agreed to pay $100,000 and limit its future tactics to settle a lawsuit brought by protesters who argued their May 31st arrests were illegal and violent. Says, although the Sheriff's Office didn't concede that it broke the law or did anything wrong, the settlement gives $10,000 to each of the 4 plaintiffs and $60,000 in attorney fees. The Sheriff's Office also agreed to 3 limitations on how it handles protests. And the limitations are that 1, officers can't order protesters to disperse unless there's a well-grounded fear of a breach of the peace in the form of imminent violence, a threat to public safety, or impairment of traffic. Number 2 is officers can't arrest protesters for failure to comply without first specifying what area they have to disperse from and notifying everyone they must disperse and what the consequences would be if they don't. Officers must also point and where protesters should walk in order to disperse and provide enough time to allow them to do so. And the third one is that officers can't use chemical agents or irritants unless alternative crowd control methods are ineffective and the use of those agents is the most reasonable alternative to address the threats. So those are the terms of the settlements. And that was, the settlement is a clear win for the protesters who was asking for Federal District Judge Brian Davis to order the Sheriff's Office to adopt those rules. So they conceded and stated that those were the terms that they were going to agree to.
I've always said that change does not occur when everything is going good or seemingly good. Change only takes place on the heels of some adverse actions. And in this case, your leaders have set a culture that has gone outside of the parameters of right, and the law had to come back in and set those boundaries, or reiterate or tighten up those boundaries and set consequences. And so when people say reform, it means basically we need to get things back in order. You know, and our leadership has allowed things to go outside of the parameters of right, and they're being brought back in within those parameters. So I think it's a good thing.
Is this particular case involving the I think it was a young lady that was sitting down, it was a black lady that was sitting down, and a white lady was sitting down next to her, and they only arrested the black lady? Is that what this is pertaining to, or is this something different?
Well, she was one of the 4 protesters that was included in that lawsuit.
Yeah,
So
it was multiple.
Right.
Okay.
It was multiple incidents. You know, and you know, you're seeing law enforcement who are taking away some of the people's basic fundamental constitutional rights. And sometimes, you know, as leaders, you think you're above the law and you can come in over, you know, heavy-handed, and you start to violate people's rights. And we're starting to see that locally, you know, in a local issue that we're going to discuss later, where you're not above the law. You got to work within the confines of the law.
I think in piggybacking on what you just said, Sam, it comes across as the need to keep the peace usurps the right of people to protest. So I guess in some ways they come in, like you say, heavy-handed, because the objective is to keep the peace. But if the protest is peaceful, there's not any peace to keep. I mean, if that makes sense, because at least for the ones that I saw on video, or the ones that are part of this particular lawsuit, they were sitting down on the ground. So, I mean, I don't know how much ruckus you cause in doing that, but I think that's where it comes from. The mindset of law enforcement, keep the peace over your right to make a protest about something.
Well, I believe it's not a secret that that the Jasper Sheriff's Office are mainly conservative views, and they mainly follow what the temperature of DC right now. And the content of the protest was Black Lives Matter, which was quote unquote the enemy, you know. So it's gonna take a lot of emotion. That's when you put those emotions into effect. Like, we'll show them they can't do that. We'll show them. We'll teach them something. And not city. You know, you're not gonna disrespect us. You know, versus, you know, it's not the United States of Jacksonville. It's the United States of America, and those people had constitutional rights, like Sam said, to their First Amendment rights. So you can't violate rights, and that's one thing I train my recruits, is that, you know, no matter how, you know, your peace cannot be breached as a law enforcement officer, and you have to go by the confines of the amendments. You know, you can't have an unreasonable search and seizure, which is violation of the Fourth Amendment, and so on and so forth.
And, you know, I believe in, you know, setting the tone. As law enforcement officers, you have to control the situation. And so you have to come in and set the tone. But the tone that you want to set is that we're going to do this right. We're going to do it peacefully. We're going to be respectful of one another. However, that if you do start to go outside the lines, we have a duty and an obligation to bring you back within the lines, you know, and that may require some firmness or some force, but you want to let the person that you're interacting with, person or persons, you know, how this should take place, how justice should look, how resolution should look. You want to let them know up front so they'll know what to expect. And I think when you do that, having that open communication and everybody's on the same page, I think, everybody can, will say, okay, well, I'll agree to that. And anyone that don't, then they get what they get. But if you come in there with no warning, no communication, no expectations, and people don't know what to expect, because a lot of people don't know the law or what their actual rights are. They just going on emotion. So it's up to us to kind of control that situation.
Some of that could be accomplished too by on the front end, meet with the organizers of the protests and lay out what the boundaries are. Hey, y'all have the right to do X, Y, and Z. Anything outside of this, you're stepping outside of those rights and you're violating the law. And here's what our response would be. So let your people know these are the confines of the protests. Yeah, scream loud as you want to, but when we start tearing up stuff, then this is going to be our response.
Right.
I think you guys can, you guys remember when they had Jam Splash in Jacksonville? I think they shut down spring break in Daytona and Fort Lauderdale, and everybody diverted to Jacksonville. And I was on the field force then, the riot control squad. And initially, we was all geared up in our riot gear and, batons and fatigues and everything like that. And word came down, I think the sheriff and the third floor administration, they met with some of the organizers, and the word came down to us that we wasn't going to wear riot gear. We was going to put on, class blue uniforms, and I was on, I think it was on the community police unit at the time. So I rode bikes. So the people that had the bikes, we rode bikes, and we was at what was it? I think over Arlington, the club over in Arlington, where they had a big party. I think they had a soap party or something like that. But the parking lot was jam packed, and it went off without a hitch. It could have went real ugly had we had that type of response that happened on May 31st. If we would have did that at that time, man, it would have been real ugly. But cooler heads prevailed. They saw, they had communication, like Sam said, you communicated with the organizers and said, okay, we'll let you do this, but this is what we expect. And we're not going to be heavy-handed. We're not going to come out like the Gestapo, but, we're going to be chill. But once this gets to a certain point, we're going to shut it down. And they respected that. We had no problems.
Yeah. As leaders, you got to be able to connect with people. You got to be able to show some diplomacy. They got the sense that you are fair. They got the sense that that you're going to allow them to have some rights, exercise their rights. They want that. And I think when you communicate that, I think most people will respect that. Now, just like anybody else, you're going to have some citizens that are not going to do the right thing, and you're going to have some overzealous officers that's not going to do the right thing. But if your organizer is a strong leader, he should be able to identify and quell those individuals. And if your leaders in law enforcement, if they know their people, they should be able to put mechanisms in place that should also address those overzealous officers. So it's all about proper planning, but you got to be a good leader, got to be a visionary and a diplomat. And
you can't take the position that we're going to deputize everybody in the county that's on a gun and to bring the peace that we want to keep. That's not the right way.
No, people take offense to it. Because I think a lot of people who hear those strong messages, I think they know who you're speaking to, and they take offense to it. People not stupid. You see those subliminal messages, you expect for them to be received by the person you're sending it out to. So people know who you're talking about.
Yeah, it makes for a good soundbite, and it may boost your 5 minutes of fame for that moment. But like you said, people don't forget. They remember that stuff, and like you say, it can lead to consequences and repercussions.
Yeah. So With that being said, as a leader, do you think that there is a separation from the way you conduct yourself in your personal life? Does it have an effect on how effective you are able to lead the people that you are governing? Can you do one and the same effectively? Can you have a personal life that may have some questionable things in it, and that be personal and set to the side, but you come to lead your people and still able to lead effectively? Can that be done?
I'm gonna say yes and no. And the yes is if what is happening on the personal side doesn't have any impact on the professional side, then yeah. If it does, then you got to accept the fact that your personal life now has rolled over into your professional life and it's impacting it. For example, if there have been many law enforcement leaders that we've heard stories about, them doing XYZ with XYZ person. And because it just kind of stayed as an in-house wink, wink, nod, nod kind of thing, it didn't have a blow-up effect. But when things like that turn into scandals that leak out into the public, then I think it becomes difficult for you to command people to behave a certain way when you're not, you're yourself not even, you didn't hold yourself to that same standard. So I liken it unto everybody has something that they don't want nobody to know about. So if you govern or if you rule from that perspective, when the hammer drop on you, people can understand. But if you rule it from a perspective of don't do X, Y, and Z, because if you do, I'm gonna knock your head off, then when your skeletons fall out the closet, everybody now looking at you like, okay, it's time for your head to get knocked off. So it's, like I said, everybody has that, those things that they don't want anybody to know about. But if you treat everybody like you want to be treated, or if you, allow grace when it's necessary, because the stuff you got going on behind the scenes ain't clean, then maybe when your stuff come out, people have sympathy. But when like you say, Sam, when you rule heavy-handed, then people looking for a heavy hand to come back when your stuff come out.
Yeah.
Personally, I can't respect somebody who goes by the do as I say and not as I do type of rule, and it causes for a low morale. I mean, look at Mayor Marion Barry getting caught smoking crack in a hotel. I mean, the people who worked under him, they lost respect. I mean, how do you respect it? Him telling you to do something, and he's a crackhead. I know some issues, some things that you guys probably know too. Some personal things, people sleeping with other people's wives and this and that, and at the sheriff's office in positions of power. And although it didn't seep into a big blowout in the media and social media wasn't around back then, it caused a lot of people, the foot soldiers, the people on the street, they had a lot of grumbling and complaining. They lost respect. I mean, it's like, how do you expect us to follow you when you basically you have no respect for anybody else, whatever that you like, you can do whatever you want to do, and because you just got ranked, that don't, it's not right. So.
Yeah, leading by example is a fundamental trait of a good leader. You got to lead by example. You have to be able to be accountable for your own actions. You have to be able to take responsibility. And when you lack those basic leadership attributes, I don't think you can lead effectively. The people won't respect you. And going back to, what we were saying about someone who rules with a heavy fist, they got to understand that that pendulum of justice swings both ways. So when it swings in your direction, you can't cry foul. They after me, this is wrong. You got to stand up and be counted. I mean, real men, real true leaders, they stand accountable for their actions, because that's what they preach as a leader to the people that they were chosen to govern.
Well, that's part of the issue. Like I said, when you ruling with that heavy hand, typically the leaders aren't looking at their own indiscretions when they're doing that. So they'll knock your head off for something. I'll give you a good example. When Newt Gingrich was leading the charge to have Bill Clinton impeached for essentially having an affair and lying about it, he was having an affair. So it makes the whole thing like, okay, you trying to chop my head off for my wrongdoing, but look at what you got going on. And not to say that a person in a leadership position is, you're supposed to do your job. If you got to hold people accountable, but hold yourself accountable first. You should be the first one on the chopping block in your own head for your screw ups and mess ups, and then be willing to, when you get caught, be willing to go, hey man, I messed up. I made a mistake. Everybody make mistakes. Everybody make bad decisions, bad judgment. Nobody's above that. So like you said, Sam, when it comes down, it can't be, or they after me, or this a hit job. No, it's not a hit job. If it is a hit job, you set it up to be a hit job with, your actions and activities.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I've often heard the cliche, you can't legislate morality. I've never really bought into it. What do you guys think? Do you think that a person's moral indiscretion has nothing to do with the law, that it can't be enforced by law? Or do you think that cliche is old and outdated, and that morality can be legislated? Because I'm under the notion that it can, because I see it every day. I see that is the foundation of almost every law. Every law emanate from a moral principle. So what's your guys' thought?
Well, personally, I believe that, from the beginning of time, you can't be a leader because you can be compromised through, and the biggest thing you get compromised is either money or sex. And look at the biblical times. Samson, he was compromised by sex. And a lot of great leaders, they've been compromised, brought down by sex. We had presidential candidates that were strong, looked like they were strong contenders. And, they got caught with some photographs on a boat with a side chick and derailed their campaign. And one thing we learned in the academy in becoming the police, and it always stuck with me, is when they said that badge will get you a whole lot of women, but it only take one woman to get that badge. And I never forgot that. And, so I was on my P's and Q's, especially after becoming a police officer, but because that's a position of authority. I didn't want to be compromised by, you sleeping with somebody, say it's a person who's doing illegal activity and you sleeping with them, and then they play the game of, okay, if you tell on me, I'm gonna tell on you, so they start doing more and more stuff, and before you know it, you caught up over your head, and you're looking at a federal indictment because you're a police officer and they're a regular civilian. So it has to be, unfortunately, rules have to be set in place because people don't use common sense. And like Sam said before, you got to have integrity. I mean, integrity, it's either in you or it's not in you. You can't teach integrity. You know, you either got it or you don't.
I think I don't know if you can legislate morality, but I think you can set the standard. People are going to be who they are. So if the standard or the whatever the law is that's set based on morality, and like you said, Sam, all of it comes from some kind of moral compass. Even though you have it, people are still going to violate it.
And that's what the law is designed to do, to hold you accountable if you violate it.
Right. I mean, thou shalt not kill has been around for a long time, and it has not stopped anybody from killing. So the standards can be set. I don't know. I don't buy into the notion that because that's the standard, everybody's going to abide by it. It has to either be taught, trained, and believe that because of the position you in, you have to, behave a certain way. I mean, there's just certain things you can't do. It's like, as a law enforcement officer, there are certain things you can't do. You can't, or you shouldn't, be caught doing lines and going out and enforcing the law. That no match. A part of that you can't do that. The other part is you shouldn't have a desire to do that and be a law enforcement officer. Those two don't go together.
Now, are we saying the same thing when you say standards and I say law? And are we saying the same thing, that even a law can't make a person do the right thing, but it can hold you accountable if you don't uphold that standard or you violate that law? Is it all? It sounds like we're saying the same thing, just using different terminologies, because you can't make a person do anything, and that's why you put laws in place to tell them these are the standards, and if you go outside the standards, you're going to be held accountable, but it's your choice.
Right. Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. We just saying it a little different, because when I think about legislating morality, I'm thinking about the law of the land, as well as work performance standards, and the whole gamut. So there are things you can and can't do as it relates to state statute and federal statute, and then there are things you can and can't do based on operating procedures on your job or whatever. But at the core of each one of those different things are some standards based on morality. So yeah, I think it hit the same way regardless, whether you violate the law or you violating something ethical at work. Yeah. At some point, them pathways gonna cross.
Yeah, I think standards and the laws are basically, all it is setting boundaries. You got a standard, that's a boundary. A law, that's a boundary. Once you cross the boundary, there's consequences.
And I think that's why you have laws, and then you have policies, then you have guidelines. They're all designed to maintain order and structure, and they give people parameters, specific parameters to operate within. And when they go outside of those parameters, whether it's guidelines, training, policy, or law, then there are consequences to be met. Even in the home, as parents, have household rules, rules of the house. And in that home, that's law. And if a child or anyone that's up under that roof go outside of it, there's consequences. So, I think it's all the same. Bottom line is that there are parameters that has to be set, and if a person goes outside of them, there has to be consequences to their actions.
I
Yeah.
also think because of what you just said, that sparks a lot of the protests that's been taking place, is because what people see is obviously behavior that's outside of the standard. And too often there is nothing being done about it, or very little being done about it, because of who it's happening to. At least that's how it's perceived.
That's the outrage. The
Yeah.
outrage is because of the double standard. And when you're taking away a person's rights and freedom, just because you have been given that authority, they become outraged when they see you violating the same standards or laws that they were punished for, and you're walking away, getting away with it. People become outraged, and that's why you see in the protests, people want, hey, if you're going to hold me to that standard and hold me accountable, they expect for you to hold everybody to that same standard.
And I'm gonna piggyback off of you, Sam, with the recent shooting of the 5-year-old in North Carolina. People are outraged. They say, "Oh, where's Black Lives Matter? Where's everybody? You know, what's the protest? Where they?" There was no protest because the man was arrested. The suspect was arrested within 24 hours. Arrested, put in jail. Breonna Taylor's, her case is still, it's over 150 days. It's still pending. That's the outrage. That's the difference with, you know, so when I see the memes and I see the comments, okay, why don't you protest this? You protest that, but you don't. That's why. Because there's the consequence, like Sam said, the consequences have been, the person who did the shooting, they've been arrested.
Right.
They're meeting their consequences. And Breonna Taylor's, in her case, it's been over 150 days. There's still no consequences yet.
Right. And that's all people want. I mean, speaking from a personal standpoint, you know, in my career as law enforcement, or any time in the workplace, being in the military as a soldier, being a officer on the police force, you know, I know what good leadership looks like. And if I did something that was outside of the lines, you know, I got disciplined for it, you know, and I accept that. You know, now I probably, you know, screamed and fussed about it, but ultimately in the end, if I was wrong, I took my medicine.
And that's easier to do when you believe everybody is being held to that same standard. Because yeah, we mess up and, you know, we take the reprimand or whatever it is we got, but that can't happen to me, and I get wrote up, and then I see somebody else that happened to, and because they're in a command position, nothing happens to them.
And they don't even have to be in a command position. They can be in the clique. You know, they can be one of the, one of the friends of a friend. I mean, like you said, the fair should be across the board. You know, it don't matter who you are, who you hang out with, who you know, who you're related to. Fair is fair.
So do you think society overall don't frown upon affairs, marital affairs, or associating with a married woman or co-worker's spouse? Do you think that if it doesn't blow up into a big scandal, that it's accepted? I mean, in all aspects of life, people hear about, oh, you know, such and such is doing this or that. If it's just between those two people, is it just their issue? Or should it be looked at as it's going to have an impact on more people, especially if it's involving workplace relationships or workplace employees or something of that nature? Do you think that it should be looked at just as harshly as a criminal violation or a major policy violation, or should that be looked at? You know, that's just between those two people.
I gotta be honest, man. I've lost quite a bit of faith in society because we elected a national leader, and all of those things that you just said were check boxes in that particular deal. And there are people that completely overlook that, cast that to the side, and I have an issue with that. So should it be the same as breaking the law if it's just between them two? I don't know. I can't speak on that. That's not for me to decide. But it should be an important factor when it comes to, can you lead others? And that should have that should carry more weight with people than it does, or at least the way it appears, because ultimately what that boils down to is truthfulness and faithfulness.
But with this being a so-called Christian nation, America, one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not commit adultery. However, we've had countless of our leaders, and matter of fact, it don't even have to be leaders. It can be CEOs, people in leadership positions in everyday life that are committing adultery, coveting their neighbor's wife. In other countries, the ones that they want to look down upon, and other religions that they want to vilify, the so-called Christians want to vilify, those countries they stick and they believe that they don't play that. They can get stoned to death. You know, if you're violating that, if you caught committing adultery, you can be stoned to death. You know, so it's you're either gonna be one or the other. You know, you're either gonna be upstanding Christian, follow the Bible to the T, the 10 Commandments to the T, or you're gonna do whatever you want to do.
I also don't even like that title of America being a Christian nation, because America is not Christ-like at all. And
that's why I said.
Yeah,
that's why I said so-called.
Yeah, it's so. Like I say, when you have that going on, and then smoke, like you said, there's a thing with people in positions of power, that power seems to go to the head, or reveals the corrupt nature of what's on the inside of them, and it ends up being, I could have any woman I want, or I can have any, do whatever I want, and it comes out in their behavior, and then you find out 2-3 years later, this is something they've been doing all along, and it's like, well, why do you feel like you can do that, get away with it, and then get upset when you get checked for it? That's puzzling to me. It would be like, okay, I know I'm doing wrong, and you get caught, you got me, versus I ain't did nothing wrong.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I guess we're all former JSO employees. We still have connections to the city of Jacksonville. We watch the national news as well as the local news. And one of the hot topic issues is Clay County Sheriff Daryl Daniels in a marital affairs scandal. Most people in our circle knows, but to bring our listening audience up to date, Sheriff Daniels is the elected sheriff of Clay County. Prior to him taking office in Clay County, he was a high-ranking member with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and he ran the Jails and Prisons Division. At the time, he was 48 years old, and a young female officer under his command to some degree started an affair, and she was at the age of 21 at the time. Apparently, this affair went on for a couple of years. While when they initially met, apparently she was single, but at some point in time, she ultimately married, and while Darrell Daniels was married and continued to stay married throughout their affair. Years go by, I guess, time goes by, and the mistress, the female officer, husband gets wind that his wife is having an affair with Darrell Daniels, which he said had came into their life, him and his wife life as a personal friend. And he felt like once he realized they were having an affair right up under his nose, he felt betrayed. So he lodged an internal complaint with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. And that's when everything blew up. So it no longer was personal. It became basically a workplace issue because she was an employee and he was an employee. So the story goes on to Sheriff Daniels tries to clean it up or appease his wife that relationship is over. So he says, and I'm paraphrasing, I'll show you, I'll call her, we'll meet, and I'll get her out here and I'll show you that it's over. In doing so, he, from what the female said, that they met at their normal meeting place, but he kept bouncing around from parking lot to parking lot. And when he moves, she'll follow. And then he'll stop and then he'll move again, giving the impression that she was trailing him from spot to spot. And so that led him to orchestrate what she said was his ultimate plan, was to call his officers, because it happened in his jurisdiction, and say that there was a woman that was stalking him. So his officer converged on the scene, detained this female officer who was off duty at the time, had her 7-year-old child in the car with her. She's a correctional officer, so she was authorized to have a firearm, which was in the glove box. The responding officer asked the sheriff, who was not in uniform or in his official duty capacity, well, what you want us to do? And he said, do it, arrest her. They did. Apparently they were in the midst of doing the paperwork, detaining her. She said she was held for about 6 hours. And another officer of rank intervened and said, this ain't right. I don't think we have enough to proceed. We can't move forward with this. So they ultimately let her go after about 6 hours of detention. So that's kind of been the setup. And it went on to that the state attorney picked it up as to, was this a lawful arrest? Was this person's rights violated? And that's how it got thrusted into the legal part of this sordid affair. Would either one of you guys like to pick up on it from there? Or would you like me to continue? But
I can fill in a couple of spots. At the time, I think Daniel said they had an event that him and the female was at the same place at the same time, and I can't remember what venue it was at, but it was after the event is when they went to their rendezvous spot. Daniel's wife followed in her car, which was a separate vehicle, and she was also at the meet spot. So at the time when the Clay County Sheriff's officers were called in reference to a stalker or a suspicious vehicle, which the reports state that Daniels claimed that he had no idea who this female was. She kept following him around, and he was in fear for his safety. The responding officer, the first person on the scene, happened to be a sergeant. The sergeant said when he got there, he initially, spoke with him, and Daniels and his wife was together, and he said he felt uncomfortable at the time. He spoke with the female. I believe her first name was Sierra. Sierra said, hey, told him the story about the backstory about them having an affair, being together, and meeting up at a spot, whatever. He called his lieutenant. So the lieutenant shows up. They ultimately, Daniel said, hey, they asked him what he wanted to do. He said, arrest him. And like you said, the sergeant felt uneasy about it. He was like, I don't know about this, So he actually put her in handcuffs, detained her, spoke with the lieutenant. They ended up, I guess, taking her down to the station. Also, Daniel said he didn't want her in his jail, DeKalb County. He said send her to Duval County. So the lieutenant was like, no, we don't, no, unless you get authorization from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, Duval County Sheriff, you need to call him and find, get permission to do that. So, per the reports, Daniels calls the sheriffs of Duval County, Mike Williams, and Mike Williams like, no, man, she can't bring her here. You can't bring her here. So, so they ultimately called the state attorney, Clay County, and it was like, no, there's no basis for an arrest. So the sergeant actually ends up volunteering to take Sierra home. It's, like I said, Sierra had receipts. They had a 6-year affair. She was 21 at the time, like Sam said. She was impressionable. She was a correctional officer at the same jail in which Daniel was a supervisor, which we all know with all the EEOC, videos we've seen about workplace, you can't have an affair with somebody who you're in a supervisor position over. In addition, she had pictures, text messages. She had trip, photographs of them been in Costa Rica together. And all of this is, like you said, when Daniels were married at the time. The things that came out during the report, FLE, they came in and did an investigation. And some of the other things that came out that was, wasn't really public knowledge is that Sierra's husband had moved on after finding out about the affair, following the police report, nothing really coming out of it, following the internal affairs complaint, nothing really coming out of it. He moved on with his life. He got a new girlfriend. The new girlfriend ended up getting a text message from Daniels, reportedly, at midnight on her birthday, told her to put a big girl panties on because he had something to tell her. She's like, she didn't know how he got her number, how she got her information, whatever. It goes on to say he contacted her later and described her to a T because Sierra had provided a photograph of her to Daniels. Daniels later tried to hook up with her, wanted to meet up with her in Texas. So all that is, the FDLE, they got all that information. From being an investigator, once you start shaking the tree, ain't no telling what's gonna fall out. Another thing they found out, he had deleted a bunch of messages. He had took his phone in to get swapped out. He said that something about it was running slow or whatever. The IT guys, they felt something wasn't up. So they felt something was wrong. So they actually kept the phone because they said it didn't sound right. What was being said. They wanted to scrub the phone. He wanted them to scrub the phone because there was some stuff on there that he didn't want to get out. And they provided that phone to FDLE, which they got a lot of videos and sexting and all kind of stuff on it. So it's kind of, they got receipts. So that's one thing to say, it's a really sticky situation.
Hey, Smoke. That look on LJ's face is a look of utter disgust. So I am curious to know what's on his mind. So can you please finish this sordid tale?
Well,
yeah.
the last part of
Go
it
ahead
is
and
that.
finish, Mo. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. The last part, initially when everything broke, his wife, Daniel's wife, was by his side the whole time.
Hey,
up until.
Let LJ close it out. I mean,
Go ahead, RJ.
we gave the intro. You gave the meat. Now let Law hammer it home.
Listen, y'all have both shared some things in this story that I had no idea about. A lot of what I knew about it was based on what was in the articles and what different people would text me about. But just listening to the parts that filled in the blanks that I didn't know, a couple things. A, how can a person in that position that you've done these things, when it starts to come out, how can you then be so arrogant and act like nothing happened or you haven't done anything wrong? Like I said a little while ago, okay, you did what you did, you ended up getting caught. Hey man, you got to eat the fruits of your labor. You can't pawn that off on, people coming after you and it's political and all that. No, you did that. That actually happened. You did that. Nobody made that up. And so my disgusted look that you saw on my face, Sam, was partly the fact that this happened and it's it's being denied and fought like he's 100% completely free from doing anything wrong, and then at the same time trying to convince the people, the community that you serve or supposed to be serving, and the men and women that you're leading, that this has nothing to do with your ability to do that job. Absolutely it does.
But that's
like
his,
how would you handle somebody else in within the agency doing that very same thing if another officer tried to have some, like if the same exact scenario happened and it was one of the officers under his command, he wouldn't be okay with that.
no.
And
But
and that person, that person gonna get their head knocked off for that. And so that's my angst, is because if somebody under his command had done something closely related to that, they would have met an ill fate, and he would have been pushing for that ill fate. But now that you sitting in the lion's den, now you want the lion's jaws to be locked shut, and that's not how it works.
now, as we talked about earlier, his thoughts towards this whole incident, or this whole situation, this is not an incident. This whole situation is, yes, I did those things in my personal life. I have dealt with it with my family, my wife and my family. He said he dealt with it. He issued a public apology in a community meeting to his wife. He dealt with that. So he's feeling that that's a personal issue. I did that. But it has no bearing on my ability to effectively lead a law enforcement agency. Now, what he has denied was, but you use department resources, to seek out the ex-husband's new girlfriend and try to initiate a relationship with the new girlfriend. You use department resources for that. That's one of the crimes. And when asked about it, you denied it. That's another crime. So I think they're saying, hey, you did what you did. That's personal. I'm good with that. But you use department resources to facilitate romantic interest in the ex-husband's new girlfriend. You lied to us because, like Smoke said, that when they start shaking that trees, a lot of stuff start to come out. And so now that becomes a part of the investigation. And when you deny those things, even though you felt it was personal, now it becomes department related because they question you about it and you were untrustworthy. You know, then the initial part of it was the relationship between you and the girl that happened off duty. You use your officers that you command as sheriff to facilitate an arrest, and that was an abuse of power. So those are the things I don't think that he's acknowledging. You know, as the high sheriff, he knows. I give him, you know, everybody knows he knows, but I think he's separating his personal life from his ability to lead, and it can't be done. You know, so as the story goes, he was, you know, differences of how the story goes at this point, when he was approached to either resign and never seek office again or be arrested, the investigating officer said, no, that was not the ultimatum. We was going to arrest him either way, but we gave him that option that once we arrest you, get you processed and in the system, once we will not seek prosecution, meaning that we will not take it to trial. We think we got the goods on you, that we can get a conviction, but we will drop the charges, allowing you to maintain your pension. But they're saying they never gave him the ultimatum of be arrested or resign, because the agency is saying we were going to arrest him either way. But Sheriff Daniels feel like, and a lot of the community who's seeing it feel like, they get why give a person who's a suspect in a felony an option, because the regular citizens don't get that option. If they are found have committed a felony, they gonna get arrested. So there's a lot of conflicting stories as to how that took place.
See, a lot of people don't realize felonies get dropped all the time. People play, I mean, especially in the drug game, they haul kilos. They can sign a waiver, they sign up to be a cooperating individual. That felony charge, if they work so many cases, make so many introductions, get other people knocked off, arrested, then their charges go away. You know, so it's not unusual for those. It's like those type of interactions with the state attorney's office and law enforcement with criminal activity that's been conducted. You know, another thing is, I'm sure you guys know, and I've been through divorce, so I know it does, you know, you do have some type of effect on your work relations. And his wife in July, she filed for divorce. So to go into another term with all this baggage and all this extra, and the election is, I understand the timing is suspect. It could be that it's suspect, but you know, we don't know why they did it, but we know when they did it. But the election is tomorrow, and they've already had, you know, mail-in votes, and people going in Clay County going to the polls tomorrow. And you can't say it's a Democrat versus Republican thing, because Governor Ron DeSantis, he's Republican. He's one that Daniel stumped for, and he's the one who suspended him. So I mean, in the words of Malcolm X, it seemed like the chickens came home to roost.
So the question, Law, do you feel it was a good arrest or bad politics?
It was a appropriate arrest. I don't know how much politics played into it. But I'm one of them kind of people that if politics played into it, you set the atmosphere by allowing this to drag out this far, because I'm gonna go back to the beginning of what I said. He knew what had been taking place. And if if you think it's okay as a sheriff to ask your subordinates to arrest your girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, whatever she was, if you think that's cool, you really should not be in a leadership position, because that's not cool. I mean, even as patrolmen, we had written directives that told us we couldn't act in our own affairs.
Nope.
So in that case, he was acting in his own affair by having somebody come in, put her in jail. I mean, I just, it ain't right. So that's kind of where I hinge on everything. Is whether Democrat, Republican, none of that kind of stuff matters to me. Is what's right, and that ain't it. It ain't right. Now, you and her having an affair, that's a whole nother issue. That's something you got to take up with your wife. But to some degree, because to another degree, you violated work policies and standards by dating somebody that was under your chain of command. So now here's the question. If all of this stuff was public knowledge prior to him being the sheriff, would he still be the sheriff? That's the question. Because it was going on and it was being hidden. And when it all came to a head, it's not like all of a sudden, he didn't know what was going on. He knows all the ins and outs. He probably knows stuff that the investigators don't know. But, well, probably not now because they done seen all his text messages. But I'm stuck with, how do you do that and fight like you haven't done anything wrong, and then come back trying to get these same people to put you back in that position again, as if you're, this isn't going to have any impact on how you lead men and women in a sheriff's office. That's just, at that point, in my opinion, at that point, he should have tapped out. And from what I don't know if it was an affidavit or not, but from whatever the prosecutor put out, when I read it, it was basically the same thing that people offer first-time battery domestic violence suspects for the first time. They offer deferred prosecution if they go to classes. It was almost the exact same thing. They were offering him deferred prosecution if he resigned and not run for sheriff no more, and which would allow him to keep his pension and all that. So I think he's very popular in Clay County, and I think he tried to use that popularity as leverage against what he's dealing with. But here's the reality. He ain't Donald Trump. So he actually, got arrested in his own jail. That had to be an ill feeling. And now, as daily as things come out, you now you're looking at, okay, you really are going to be charged with a felony when this, you could have dealt with this a different way. And if I was him, I would have went to them people months ago and be like, hey, y'all ain't got to investigate no more. I'm done. So just, you ain't got to look into this no more, and don't say nothing else to nobody, and give me back my phone, please. And I'm gonna move to Arizona. Y'all ain't gonna hear from me no more.
Yeah. The information I got was from the FDLE report that's online, and it's like at least 50 pages.
It is online. I want to go read that, because y'all threw out some things to me that I had no idea. And I still can't believe he knows all of this stuff and trying to fight it like he did nothing wrong.
Well, we've all heard the saying, ain't nothing like a woman scorned. And hell has no fury than a woman scorned. And, Sierra, when she saw that, what he tried to do to her, to appease his wife, she gave it all up. And then they had verification, they had receipts in his Cash App receipts that he gave her at least $30,000. Like I said, money and sex is the main two things that corrupt people in power.
Now, if you look at her interview, to me, she did not come across as a woman scorn. She came across as someone who said, I was in a relationship with a man I cared for deeply. I knew he was married. All that. She said she was okay with the departure, but they were still having relationships and contact, and then he set her up, so when she was approached about the particulars of what was going on, she was like, I gotta be truthful. And so if they're asking me, I'm gonna be truthful, but I don't wish him no ill will. So I don't see her doing malicious thing that would indicate she was a woman scorned. What I'm seeing is the sheriff using his power and influence to put her in a dim light by trying to get her arrested. What I see is a sheriff who, as a man that can't control his urges, seeking out another woman who is the new girlfriend of the ex-husband. That's like sticking a dagger in somebody. I mean, you done took his wife. Now you're going after his girlfriend for no reason. It wasn't like he had interacted with her and had an attraction. It appears he sought her out for no apparent reason, just to say, I can get her too. Now that's just my opinion, but I don't see her. She didn't come across as a scorned woman.
Well, what it was that I believe she had feelings. I mean, anybody, if you're in a relationship with somebody over at least 6 years, you're going to have some type of emotional connection. And that's probably one of the reasons that I think was it Law? I think asked if either you, Sam, or Law, asked if he would have became sheriff, he would have got elected if all this would have came out before he ran for sheriff. The reason she kept her mouth shut is because she cared. She was a rider. She ride or die. But it had the last straw when she showed up at the park at their meeting spot, and then his wife was there, and then through the FDLE report, reporting stated the sergeant said he felt uncomfortable because he had Daryl to write a statement, and Daryl had his wife. He knew something was up because he kept having, he's the sheriff, but he kept having his wife to proofread his report. That kind of threw up some red flags. So when Sierra saw that, she was like, oh, okay, I see what time it is. You made your choice. Now I'm not gonna keep my mouth shut anymore. I ain't trying to hurt you, but I ain't trying to help you either.
Right.
So, going back to the question you asked, Sam, was it a good arrest or was it bad politics? I got to take politics completely out of this because I want to say maybe a month or so ago, FDLE took this to Melissa Nelson, right?
Right. Yep.
So when I first heard of that, my first thought was if the investigators, and I put it in the mind of FBI and DOJ. So FDLE had a case, they investigated for a year or whatever, and then they took their findings to a prosecutor. That let me know right then he was going to jail. Because it's just like when the FBI take a case to DOJ, they're not taking it to DOJ for them to non-prosecute. But then when she recused herself from it, that was another red flag for me to let me know, okay, he getting ready to go to jail for real. Because she could have easily non-prosecuted if it was nothing there. And this is my thinking. So I think the timing of it is bad, but I can't, hearing what y'all saying now and then knowing, what I did know about it, the timing of it sucks, but I think that's just the way it shook out. Because of it going to Melissa Nelson and then being recused and then the governor appointing somebody else. And I'm pretty sure that person had to come up to speed to what was going on. And with all the information that they had, it's just, man, look, you can't be a sheriff and ordering people to put people in jail, and that person ends up being your mistress, and that's just a bad look. That's a bad look. Now I think where it got worse for him is when he started lying about what was going on and trying to hide the stuff. I understand it. Same reason I understood Bill Clinton, lied when he lied. I get it. But after you walk out of that investigating room, you couldn't be like, hey, can I talk to one of y'all on the side? Like, listen, I'm gonna go ahead and resign. Can y'all put this away? Don't let this come out no more. Don't just hide it. I'm gonna resign and move to Arizona. Y'all won't hear from me no more. So my question would be, what is it in a person in that position, in that scenario, that makes you fight to the death when you know you dead wrong?
Some of it is ego and arrogance. I mean, you don't rise to a high position without having a high degree of self-confidence, and then that self-confidence can boil over to a little bit of arrogance. That arrogance can cloud your judgment into that you have an illusion of power, because you have power, but you don't have ultimate power. And so you have that illusion. So I think if you're not careful, that happens all the time. And Smokey said it yesterday, which is a common cliche: power corrupts, but absolute power absolutely corrupts. And we see it time and time again. So person get drunk with power, within that organization, within Clay County, he was the high sheriff. He had power, and sometimes, you got to respect the power that you yield. If not, it'll overcome you.
Yeah, as far as, was it politics or was it good arrest? I think it was a good arrest, and having been in federal investigations and a lot of investigations, seeing how the system actually works, I call it politics, because there's no telling what happens. I mean, behind the scenes, phone calls, meetings, anything can happen. I mean, so that's something that we probably could never, like Lonzo said on training day, it ain't what you know, it's what you can prove.
Yeah. But
Smoke, based on your federal experience with essentially, misconduct by law enforcement officials, when a entity like the FDLE takes something to a prosecutor, that's because they have something that can be charged, correct?
It's a slam dunk. It's game over. That's like when you get a Fed case, 99.9% of the Fed cases get played out. Only probably 1% goes to trial. And normally, almost 95% of those that go to trial end up losing. They get found guilty. So yeah, they're not going to take something that's borderline, or that they know if they if they take it to the prosecutor and say, hey, this is what we got, what you want, it's like, okay, how you want to play it. That's pretty much how you want it. You got a good hand, how you want to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was my thought process, particularly, like I said, when she recused herself. That kind of told me if it was nothing there, she wouldn't have recused herself. So the fact that she did that just kind of gave me a little clue that they might have some smoke and some fire.
Yeah, she recused herself because one of her employees, one of her investigators is potentially going to be a witness in this case.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Well, then that makes it unanimous, because I agree that it was a good arrest, but the timing was bad. But what I tell people is he would have been more upset, and the public or his supporters would have been more upset had they rushed to judgment. And when you do a thorough investigation, even though it takes a little bit more time, I think ultimately the people who wants justice done fairly, I think they can respect that. So I'm okay with the length of time if the investigation was being conducted fairly and thoroughly. I'm okay with it. Unfortunately, the timing was bad because it came so close to the election date. So I think it was a good arrest, just bad timing.
Like you said, Sam, some of those investigations, I know the one I was on with the officers I worked, that investigation went for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think the timing, I'm gonna put the timing, I'll put that back on him because, again, if I'm sitting all the way in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm looking at these little breadcrumbs falling, he already knew what was going on. So if I'm looking at all these dominoes falling, he could have picked up the phone and told his lawyer, hey, man, we can stop this. We ain't got to go no further than this. Like I said, I go to Arizona, and y'all ain't got to hear about me no more. Because, he knew. It's not like he was totally oblivious to what was going on. Just like them dudes in your situation, Smoke, they knew. They knew exactly what was going on. So when the hammer fell, it was like, okay, certain people start, let me tell y'all really what happened. So that's the position he should have took, in my opinion. And they could have avoided all of this.
But like Sam said, that's why they call it the game. Some people play the game so long, they've been winning so much, they're like, ain't no way I can lose. But it's like, hey, you're going to crap out something. You can stay on that crap table you want to. You're going to lose everything.
Man, listen, when you color outside the lines long enough, you got a whole nother picture over there.
I just, like Law said, had he just went ahead and ended this sooner, took it out of the public's eye, I don't think it would be this much conversation. But he fighting it, knowing that they had something on him, he kept it in the public. He made several videos that were controversial, videos that allowed people to come in and with an opinion. If he's going to put it out there, he has to accept the fact that people are going to have opinions. Now, we all know him personally. I have nothing against him. I don't think you guys have anything against him, but this now has become national news, and we have every right to speak on it and give our opinion, because he allowed it to keep going public and to keep growing and growing. Now it's a national issue. So yeah, we've been calling balls and strikes for 12 weeks now. So we were gonna touch on this situation. We was gonna give our opinions and our perceptions. He's all right with me. He ain't never done anything to me. If I see him, I'll speak to him. But I think it was a good arrest based on what I know. Using my good judgment, my law enforcement experience, my ability to rationalize things, I think it was a good arrest. I don't think he'll ever sit in that sheriff's seat again. I just don't see it.
Well, I think if him being a sheriff, if that had been anybody under his command that had done the exact same thing, he would have been leading the charge for them to be facing the exact same thing he facing. And so I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. I just think because that's a wrong thing to do for a position an authority like that. He would have been leading the charge if that would have been somebody under his command.
Oh yeah, yeah. He
Y'all know I keep it 100, and it's always facts over feelings with me. And everything I stated, like I said, I read from the FDLE report. So it's not from Facebook, social media, posts or any memes. I went to the police academy with Daryl Daniels and Mike Williams. So I know both of them personally, and both of them I like. I mean, we had fun, we enjoyed it, but it was, it ain't nothing personal. I stand on everything I said, and I say it to his face. It is what it is.
Yeah. So it ain't personal. It's business, and like I say, we've been calling balls and strikes from day one. So that nobody's excluded. I mean, I expect if I was to ever get in that hot seat, you guys would call balls and strikes on me, and the public would judge me just as harshly. So I'm trying to do everything I can to keep it on the straight and narrow, because it wouldn't be pretty. People have their opinions and they have their perceptions. So I try to keep it on the straight and narrow. I'm too old for this now.
I know this much. I ain't spent 22 years in law enforcement to be trying to go to prison. I know that doggone much.
And I damn sure ain't gonna give nobody no ammo to shoot me with my own gun. You gotta bring your own gun and ammo. And you better shoot first and don't miss. It better be fatal.
So, well.
We had a couple of comments.
What you got?
Let me see.
Oh yeah, we ain't even looked at the comments. We gotta look at the comments. I can't see them. Can y'all see them? Oh shoot, I can't see them, man.
Bobby Drummond says, one must be moral in order to be moral. RV Nelson says, it's the pride over common sense syndrome. Agreed.
I can see that. Because common sense, when you caught and you still fighting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Larry Wilson says, pain will teach you what pride wouldn't allow you to learn. That's his lesson. No judgment, though.
That's a word right there.
And Sharon Coley had one word: entanglement.
That's the new word that's going around all these sordid affairs. It's entanglement. These
man,
love triangles. So.
And Lance McFarland said it's a teachable moment. And that's one of the things that we do these conversations for is educate the public, educate everybody, not just the public, but I mean, I've learned a lot from doing these conversations myself and reading the comments and interacting with you guys.
Well, something that I say all the time, and I believe this: dummies learn from experience. Wise people learn from other people's wisdom and mistakes. You don't have to be intelligent to learn from your own mistakes. Dummies can do that. Wise folk learn from other folk mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think we've had enough of police misconduct just in our area to, understand certain things you need to try to avoid. So if you got to the point to where, you got to break it off with your side piece, you might want to cut her a check and move her to Arizona or something. I don't know, but trying to get her locked up, come on, man.
Well, I guess the big lesson, or not even a lesson, but what we were talking about as far as from a leadership perspective is, if you're going to be a leader, an effective leader, you got to lead by example. you know, and you got to stand accountable for your actions, you know, and I think people can respect that, but they looking at you and they want to follow a just person, you know, someone who that rises above, you know, them. Because if you're gonna lead me, you really have to be better than me, you know. So, gotta lead by example.
Well, maybe that's the example he was trying to set. I don't know. That kind of stuff bothers me because it makes the profession overall look bad when the profession is already hemorrhaging from other stuff. So this just kind of piles on, and we know it don't have to be like that. You know, that's not required to do the law enforcement job.
Right.
I know a big lesson that I think that a lot of people should learn, not from only this situation, but situations like this, is to stay humble. No matter how big you get, stay humble.
Yeah. You said a mouthful there, you know, and a lot of people rise in their profession, or they acquire a little bit of authority, man's authority, and ego sets in, and they lose all perspective of, you know, what's good and what's kind and what's right and what's moral. So you said a mouthful there, you know. So although I've cast my opinion, my judgment based on what facts I do know, I still pray that, you know, whatever it takes for him to get right, you know, with his God, with his family, with his future, you know, I pray that, you know, he gets his life in order. But so I can show mercy, but you still have to be held accountable. So I'm a merciful man, but I do believe that judgment has to take place, you know. So I
Well,
guess
that's obviously coming. I guess I can liken it under King Nebuchadnezzar. At some point, like Smokey just said, we are all going to come to a humbling moment. So I guess how easy we arrive at that moment is determined by our pliability. How pliable are we? When you're not pliable, then sometimes it takes stuff like this.
Yeah, the closer you are to the ground, the less it hurts when you fall.
Amen.
Well, it sounds like we done went around with our positive moment.
That was good enough.
I got one
We got another. Go for it.
Oh.
It's been 18 years and justice has been served. Well, it hadn't been served, but the people are going to be our biggest thing. What we've been doing this conversation has been accountability. The murderers of Jam Master Jay, the DJ for the Run DMC, they were caught. 2 men was caught and arrested for murder of Jam Master Jay.
You may get by, but you don't get away.
18 years.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, they never gave up, you know, and that's a testament to the good officers in law enforcement. You know, like I said, we speak a lot on what's trending in our society, and although I'm a supporter of police reform and the Black Lives Matter movement, I also am a supporter of good law enforcement, officers that have integrity, officers that are out there doing good works, you know. So that's just a testament to the officers 18 years, never gave up. I'm sure Jam Master Jay's family, you know, is appreciative that they're going to get justice for a loved one's death. So big ups to law enforcement in that regard.
Amen. My positive thing is what Smokey already said. Stay humble.
Yeah. My positive note, stay humble. I co-sign that. Yeah. So fellas, is this session a wrap?
It's a wrap. It's 9:03.
Well, again, I would like to thank everybody who was able to tune in and follow us through this journey. I hope you guys got as much out of it as we did, you know, just, you know, coming together and, you know, with some stimulating conversations, just talking about stuff that affects us personally, you know, and hopefully that, you know, we can all grow from these conversations. So again, we appreciate it and hope that, you know, you guys continue to tune in. And again, if you have any topics that you want to put out here for us to discuss, feel free to drop us a line. This video will be uploaded to YouTube. It can be found up under our YouTube channel, Retired Voices of Reason.
Sounds good to me.
So with that, we are out till next week.
Peace.
Peace.